Nothing is about you from other people. It's always about ourselves. Whatever we say and do, even to other people, it's always about us. When you peel back all the layers, it's about us. Our own experiences, our own perceptions, our own beliefs that we are projecting onto the situation. I really do think that the only toxic positivity is us to ourselves. Nobody can make you feel inferior without your consent. This is the Energy Within podcast, all about accessing, nurturing, and building your energy and confidence so that you can get unstuck and design your life the way you want. My name is Carrie Jokala. I am your host. I am a Reiki master, a fitness instructor, a wife, a mom to 2 little boys who you can probably hear their video in the background a little bit, ever so faintly. So they're in the other room, but we're just going to do this and it'll be fine because they've been in the background before. So this is episode 112 and I am sort of starting to maybe begin the upswing of getting some of my energy back after feeling so drained for the last couple of weeks. So I hope that if you have been feeling the same, that you are now on the upswing as well. Although I am feeling a little tired today because the freaking sun rising earlier, I think, is causing Teddy to wake up earlier than he normally does. And it never really, aside from like the baby stage when the sun being up or down didn't make any kind of difference. I don't recall this ever affecting him and causing him to actually wake up earlier than he normally does. So I don't know what's going on. But JJ's like sleeping through the night. And the morning of the day that I'm recording this, he slept until like 9:30. So I don't know what's going on. But at least they're both still sleeping through the night. So I'll take it. But I'm still tired because we were up way too early this morning. Anyway, thank you for letting me vent. The topic of today's episode is one that's been a long time coming because I've considered addressing it in the past and then I could never get my thoughts completely around it in the way that I wanted to. And so I just never went ahead with it. But the topic keeps coming up. No one has said it directly to me, but it keeps showing up. Other people, other podcasts, Instagram stories. It just keeps popping up over the last couple of months and a lot in the last couple of weeks. So I have decided to address my take. You can take what resonates and leave what doesn't as usual, but my take on the phrase toxic positivity. So first of all, I asked my Facebook group. Those of you who are in the Facebook group, you might have seen the post or you may have even responded to it. I asked in the group what your thoughts are on the phrase toxic positivity. And a lot of them, even though they were all worded very differently and they all made sense to me, they all pointed to really the same conclusion that I have come to. Now there's another group. You've heard me probably talk about Chalene Johnson before. I've followed her for very many years, starting with fitness and then following her into personal development and marketing and business. And she also has 2 different podcasts, but one of them, she briefly talked about toxic positivity lately. And that was the final thing that sparked this topic for me. Like, okay, it keeps coming up. It just came up again from someone that I highly respect and follow. So it's time to talk about it. So I posted just a little brief explanation of my thoughts on toxic positivity in that group and got a lot of great responses there too. But in there, I got a little more variation from people looking at it from the perspective that I guess I'll have to say I don't agree with. I'm not knocking it. I'm not saying they're wrong. Just from my perspective, I don't think that it's fair or right. I see where they're coming from though, and we'll talk about all of this. So The first thing that pops up when I search for a definition of toxic positivity is that toxic positivity, that's very hard to say actually, involves dismissing negative emotions and responding to distress with false reassurances rather than empathy. It comes from feeling uncomfortable with negative emotions. It is often well-intentioned, but can cause alienation and a feeling of disconnection. I'll dive into that because that actually is the side that I don't really agree with. I scroll down a little bit, and the next one I see is toxic positivity is the belief that no matter how dire or difficult a situation is, people should maintain a positive mindset. Based on my own personal thoughts on what toxic positivity is and isn't, and a couple of other podcasts that I've listened to and posts that I've seen, this is the way I view it. That toxic positivity is pretending that things are okay, that you're okay when you're not dealing or facing up to the negative, or maybe not negative, I shouldn't say negative, but the sad emotions, the anger, the fear, the anxiety, the depression. You're trying to gloss over it and pretend that it doesn't exist and that you don't feel that way. My take on the only time that positivity is actually toxic is when it's you being fake positive toward yourself. When you are not dealing with your own stuff, not facing up to your own shadows, and trying to pretend, like I said, that everything's okay when it's not, buying into this whole good vibes only thing, that it's not okay to feel sad or upset, or that there's some sort of externally imposed time limit on how long you can feel a certain emotion. And I'll read you a couple of the responses that I got just from my own group about what toxic positivity is or how they feel about it. So the first response is that you aren't feeling the negative and feeling through stuff, suppressing feelings instead of processing. Makes me think fake happy, the worst kind in my opinion, and I agree. When you are unable to address the bad things and transmute them, they become limitations and blocks that prevent us from reaching our full potential. Dealing only with love and light invalidates negative emotions that then become stuck. I truly believe in diving into the shadows. And there's another nudge for me from the universe that it's time to launch shadow work. It's coming, I promise. Generally, when I encounter this, it just screams inauthentic. Some people are naturally friendly, outgoing, and positive, but in those cases, it hits as real, not toxic. Can't have the sweet without the sour, as they say. This one I really liked, that it's important to feel our human feels and not do a spiritual bypass. I have other thoughts on that phrase, but I understand the meaning behind that. So you're pretending that you're not human. That said, some people toss around the term toxic positivity because they have become addicted to their pain stories. When we see things through the eyes of our spirit, they are always emotionally neutral. Positive then becomes the highest possible perspective, which often means seeing things more from the soul or spirit perspective. And I really like that part about becoming addicted to the pain stories. So we will dive into that just a little bit in a moment. And then finally, I believe it's a real thing, especially in the way manifestation is taught in a lot of ways. You attract what you feel, your thoughts become your reality, which is true, but also without a deep understanding of the subconscious mind, energy, etc., this can actually be fear-based and counterintuitive. I'm only laughing because of my kids. An ad popped up on their YouTube video, and they don't know how to skip it without me. So, all right, so we need to teach and be taught that things deemed negative feelings, thoughts, emotions are our allies on this journey, not that they should be ignored and replaced by a positive thought or feeling. We all need feelings and emotions, as they all have their own power to guide if we learn our individual way of working with the energy of each. So right there, right on that point, that we're all different. We are all going to take a different amount of time to process through certain feelings. We're going to each process through them in a different way, and none of it is wrong, because it's been mentioned twice here about And you've heard me say this before too. There really is no right or wrong. Ooh, that's what I can use for the audio for a reel where it's like, you know what that's called? One hard pill to swallow. I love when that happens. And if you could see the inside of my brain right now and all the thoughts that are rushing in to stop me from doing that. I'm going to do it anyway. So anyway, when I look at all of these together, the way I interpret it, with the exception of a couple mentions within a couple of the comments, which we'll talk about, overall, it's about you yourself pretending that things are okay when they're not. That is toxic positivity, because that pretending, that faking is going to cause things to simmer under the surface for a long time, and eventually you're going to explode, and it's not going to be pretty. It's kind of, in a way, like the concept of keeping your house clean. If you clean up little messes as they happen, if you put things away immediately, if you straighten things up as you come across them, it's going to be easier to maintain that cleanliness. Same thing with your emotions. If you allow yourself to feel them, to feel through them, to process them on your own timeline, but continuously allowing it to happen, not trying to suppress it or ignore it, then you're going to be fine. But if you just ignore it, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse until one day it just seems insurmountable. It's not that you won't be able to get through it, but it's definitely going to be a lot harder. So why don't we deal with the shadows as they come up? As scary and as intimidating as they might be. Better to maintain than to have to do a complete overhaul. Now, the flip side, this is where I start to disagree with that other definition of toxic positivity, when people try to say that other people are being toxically positive. Because if we go back to the concept that other people, that the outside world is simply a mirror, a reflection of what's going on within us, a reflection of what we need to deal with, then it's not the other person who's toxic. Now, some of the examples that people offered in the Pod Squad group for Chalene Johnson were things like one woman's son, very young son, was about to go in for his third brain surgery and was told before the third surgery, be positive, don't think of this in a fearful way, and her saying that that is toxic positivity. Or another one of a woman who was pregnant with triplets. The twins died, and the one that lived has Down syndrome, and she was told by someone, it was a mercy your twins died. Can you imagine 3 with Down syndrome? God knew that was more than you could handle. So now please remember, this is just my opinion. First of all, those are awful, horrible situations that I feel so badly for, and I cannot imagine having to experience that. I pray that we never go through anything like that. And my heart goes out to them. No words, because there's no right thing to say in a situation like that. When people say things like that in especially very heavy, very extremely hard to handle situations like that, I think sometimes people come off as jerks, and they may not mean to. They may not, I'm not making excuses, but they may not know the right thing to say, and they're just trying their best. Because I think it's just a natural tendency for us to try, as negative as we can be naturally as well. I think it's also a negative tendency when someone else is going through something to want to try to cheer them up or try to make it seem like things are going to be okay. But we don't always know the right thing to say. And I can think of examples in my life when people have said things to me that, while I know they didn't mean anything behind it, it was the absolute wrong thing to say at the wrong time. And while they wouldn't have necessarily had any way of knowing what I was going through, I do agree that there are some things that you just don't say because you don't know what people are going through. So that said, yeah, people can be jerks. And sometimes people may not be coming to you with what they're saying with the best of intentions. Maybe they are just jerks and they're completely blowing off how you're feeling. They don't care. They just want to shut up the conversation and move on to the next thing because they don't want to deal with it. So number one, that speaks to them and what they're going through that they might need to deal with that they're not facing up to and they're now projecting onto you. But number two, and I know, don't hate me, easier said than done, but I think we need to do our best not to take it personally, to understand that people don't always know, that people don't always understand, and no matter what you say, how you say, they might not. So maybe it's going back to take what resonates and leave what doesn't. If it doesn't resonate, if they said something that was jerky, I'm not saying don't call them out on it if it needs to be called out, but I am saying do your best not to take it personally. Because really, and I just had this conversation again with another podcast that I just was a guest on. It won't be out for a couple of months, but we were talking about that idea that nothing is about you from other people. It's always about ourselves. Whatever we say and do, even to other people, it's always about us. When you peel back all the layers, it's about us. Our own experiences, our own perceptions, our own beliefs that we are projecting onto the situation. So yeah, if someone's being a jerk, go ahead and call them out on it. I've been putting my foot down in many more situations than I have ever lately. But you also do it in a way that I think is civil, matter of fact, gets your point across without necessarily being rude, but just saying that you're not okay with that. That was not okay. Maybe you need an apology, and that's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I don't think that that counts as toxic positivity. That's my main point here. I really do think that the only toxic positivity is us to ourselves. The other one that I really just don't agree with is when someone gets attacked online, and this hasn't happened to me. I'm just talking about things that I've seen, where someone who is very bubbly, positive, and just seems to always have everything going for them, people label that as toxic positivity. Well, here's the thing. If I could find it, I would tell you which episode it is, and I would try to put a link to it, but I no longer remember what episode it was. Feel free to search, but it's from Chalene Johnson's podcast, The Chalene Show. It's a very old episode. She's up to like 700 and some episodes right now. And this may have shown up in like the 100s or 200s for all I know. It was a long time ago. But I remember her talking about, after having had many podcast topics and other lectures that she's done about dealing with toxic people, dealing with negative people, she all of a sudden did one talking about what if the way we've been looking at this is a little off, that maybe this person who you have labeled as toxic is toxic for you for sure, but they're not a toxic person, period. Because think about that. I don't think that it's possible for at least most people, the vast majority of us, to be toxic for everybody. Let's just keep this in a general sense. I don't think that it's the norm for one person to be so toxic that they're toxic for everybody. Because if you look at someone who you don't get along with, who you would label as toxic, who you just don't like, you two do not get along, they probably, you look at their life, they probably have a lot of friends, or at least a couple of good friends. They have family that loves them. You know, like they're not, your average person is not toxic for everybody. If they're toxic for you, they're just toxic for you. And the reasons for that could vary. And the reasons for that could warrant cutting off contact with that person. And that's okay because they're toxic for you. So you need to get rid of them. But what if we looked at it that way? That it's not toxic for everybody. It's just toxic for you. And yeah, it's important to acknowledge that for you and take the steps necessary for you to not be around that toxicity anymore. Because what would then make it actually turn into toxic positivity would be if you were to continue pretending that everything is okay with this person, regardless of whether we give that person the toxic label or not. If you go about pretending that everything is okay and you don't deal with the emotions and the things that are coming up and the way that it's negatively affecting your life. I hope that this is making sense. And again, I know I've said this a few times, but let me just reiterate, this is just my opinion. So I'm not trying to change anybody's mind necessarily, but maybe just offer you a different perspective. That's all I ever try to do, is offer a different perspective. You don't have to take it. You don't have to agree with it. And I briefly want to address that idea of if we've become addicted to our own pain stories. I think that can often be a situation where we might try to label someone else who's happy and positive as toxic positivity because maybe, and I don't mean you directly, this is a general you, maybe you are in a place that you've been in for so long that it's kind of become a comfort zone, and consciously or unconsciously, you want to stay there, even though you know it sucks, even though you know that somewhere within you, you want better. You don't want to always feel this way, but again, it's become a bit of a comfort zone. You're comfortable there. So even though you admit it kind of sucks, you've made a bit of a path for yourself. You've created a way of living that has been working for you. So in that sense, why change it? So then when someone comes along who's injecting this complete opposite side of the spectrum, super bubbly, happy, positive, optimistic, and you want nothing to do with it, and it triggers something in you, makes you feel bad, then I see that getting labeled toxic positivity. So if we're looking at these people online who get attacked for being overly bubbly, positive, only showing the best side of their life, and it looks like they're not admitting that they're human, and how can their life be this perfect? That gets labeled as toxic. And I think it's just toxic for some people. And also, maybe that person is being toxic with the positivity towards themselves. And that's why they're showing up in that way, because they are maybe pretending that things never go wrong, that they're never sad, that they are always good vibes only. But someone else being that way to themselves, someone else projecting that, someone else showing that as their life, does not have to be toxic to you unless you decide that it is. Which leads me to what I want to wrap up with, is a quote that's been one of my favorites since I was little, and I really started working on improving my confidence. I wish I remember where I had heard it first and how old I was, but I know I was at least a teenager, I think, maybe slightly younger, maybe around preteen age. But it's a quote that's attributed to Eleanor Roosevelt. Nobody can make you feel inferior without your consent. So if you do not want to feel inferior, if you do not agree that you are inferior, if you do not want to feel attacked or triggered or sad or angry or defensive, you don't have to let other people make you feel that way. And I'm really not trying to be tough love, but I'm just saying that while we do have knee-jerk reactions, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I don't think we should suppress them, once we're out of that knee-jerk state, it's then a choice of how we want to feel. So you don't have to allow anyone else to make you feel unworthy, to make you feel bad, to make you feel like the way you're feeling is wrong. The key word there is consent. For someone else to make you feel bad, it requires your consent. So which way are you choosing? You take control. They are your emotions. It's your decision. You're the one with the power over yourself. You're the one in control over yourself. So you are more than welcome to disagree with me. Just keep it nice. But really, I feel like everything, it always comes back to ourselves. Always reflecting something back to us. So it's important that we process them, that we deal with them, that we work through them, that we don't personally pretend that we are okay when we're not. Good vibes only, high vibe only is not authentic. It's not real. It's not okay. We are human for a reason. I don't believe that this is a test. I don't believe that this is a punishment. I believe that this is on purpose as a way for our soul to create and experience who they are, who we want to be. This is a way for us to grow and up level on a soul level, but through a human experience. So let's stop pretending that we have to deny our humanness on any level. It's okay. It's necessary to be human. We're freaking human. Allow yourself to be human. We need all three aspects, mind, body, and spirit, to work together. We can't just work on one or two and pretend that the others are bad, that we're being tested on how well we can pretend that we're not human. I just don't believe that. And you don't have to agree with me, but I just don't believe that. So I hope you found this helpful. If you enjoyed this episode, if something stuck out to you, please share it. Do a screenshot, do a screen flow, put it up on your social media, tag me, let me know what stuck out to you. Of course, as always, I would like to offer to have you come do a Reiki session with me. I also still have the Oracle card readings, the Angel Tarot card spread available, and I don't know, maybe you want to wait a little bit because I'm thinking of offering a pretty awesome, pretty steep discount on Reiki sessions for Black Friday. So stay tuned for that announcement. I will announce what that pricing is going to be as it gets closer. I'm probably going to discount the Oracle card readings and the Angel Tarot spread as well. I just haven't decided how much of a discount I'm going to offer on those because they're already pretty cheap. But the Reiki, I'm actually going to give a pretty nice discount to. So also, it's another thing that I still have to get a page up for. I know I promised the page for the packages and I haven't put them up yet. I will. Oh, I will. I promise. Kids. I'm going to blame mom life on that. But I just got booked again for another Oracle card reading party of sorts. So what I intend to do is get a page up so that if that's something you're interested in doing as well, that you can get the ball rolling for that. So the ones I have done have been local. They've been in person, and it's been treated as a girls' night type of thing. The one coming up, I believe, is going to be actually more of a team building type of event, but it's just a fun time. Some heavy things might come up during the card read, but the night itself, the experience itself is just a bunch of women getting together that enjoy hanging out, having a good time, and then one-on-one, we go and do a card read. Each time so far, it's been the 8-card spread, but if you have a lot of people, I would recommend maybe doing the 3-card spread just for time's sake. But I would also consider doing a Zoom option. It might be a little different, but perhaps, you could set up the computer or whatever in a certain part of the home or the room, and then one-on-one have people come up to meet with me and we can do the spread over Zoom. So if you're not local, but that sounds interesting to you, we can talk about that. So why I say get the ball rolling is because we just might need to talk about scheduling. So I wouldn't want anyone to go in, purchase it, and then find out that we can't figure out a time together. So I'll give more details on how long it takes, how many people we can get through in a certain amount of time, depending on which spread we're doing. So all that information will be up once I get the page up. I don't want to promise that it'll be up by time this podcast is up because I failed last week. So if I fail again, I don't want to fail again. So I'm going to do my best. And that's all I can do. So thank you so much, as always, for being here. And I will see you next time.